Welcome to Grace Notes, the weekly community affairs show with Town of Yorktown Supervisor Michael Grace. I'm Bruce A. Parr, and we have a very special guest with us, Supervisor, that we're really energized about the guest, actually. And so we'd like to welcome Robert Fishman, who is Director of Commercial Programs right at EnergizeNY, which, by the way, is headquartered in
Yorktown.
French Hill School.
Right.
Right, Robert?
That's right, Bruce. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very glad to be here today.
So the first question is French Hill School on your program? Or
well, we're actually working with commercially owned properties,
right.
And so municipally and government-owned properties are something we're happy to support with the help we can. But we'll talk a little bit about our finance program, and that's really something for commercial and not-for-profit.
Right, and it sort of went unnoticed, but about a year and a half ago, I think we were just discussing a little bit before we got on the air that we passed the legislation to allow for the financing of energy efficiencies within buildings. So I guess what the legislation allows is that, and you'll talk about the financing, and basically you finance it and you pay it through your tax bill.
Oh. So the town collects it, actually. Right?
Town collects it, right. It was set up by a gentleman out of Bedford, correct? And
That's right. So Mark Tealking is our executive director, and he's a Bedford resident, and he's actually also, he helps Bedford as their energy advisor.
Bedford is very progressive, yes. Right, I don't know if that's a derogatory term anymore, so I don't know whether you can
It's
even...
been politicized like everything else.
He's, I guess we talk about progressives and established and whatever,
Right.
Twisting the English language into pretzels, but lately. But they're very, Bedford's been very progressive and out in the forefront on all of this. And there's a lot of different programs going around. But why don't you describe the EnergizeNY program, because it really is a program that is focused on commercial development and multifamily and nonprofits, I understand.
That's exactly right. And so the EnergizeNY program is really something that's geared for municipalities to help promote within the community. So it's really there to help commercially and nonprofit-owned properties find ways to eliminate wasted energy in their buildings.
Yeah, so I guess my understanding is that you start with an audit, right, an energy audit, which is that gratis or is that paid for?
It really depends. There are lots of different programs that we can help property owners get teamed up with. There's a group many people may know called NYSERDA. It's the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, and all of us help fund it by a little line item on our utility bills called a systems benefit charge. And all those pennies that we all pay add up to some very nice programs, and the NYSERDA group offers lots of incentives, and amongst those are free and low-cost energy audits to small businesses. And for larger businesses, they offer a cost share program, 50% cost share. So if you have a building that has lots of energy use, they use a kind of a cutoff at 100 kilowatts of electric demand as their threshold.
Is that there's a peak demand of?
That's their
peak demand.
Exactly.
Yeah, because for people, just been going through this because we had to we were just replacing the generator at the PD complex, and the difference between your regular demand and your peak demand. So, and that demand, you look at the demand charge on your energy bill, and you'll know what that is. Essentially, as for instance, our PD and court complex, peak demand is about 90 kilowatts.
Right.
But it usually running at maybe 40, 50, or 60 kilowatts on maybe average, but every once in a while you may July or August when the air conditioning is running, you'll go up to 90 kilowatts. So when we're sizing a generator, we wanted to make sure
the maximum.
Right. Yeah. So does it have to be a sustained 100 kilowatt use or a peak
It's a peak demand, and I think the way they typically look at that is in 15-minute increments on your utility usage. The meters determine that, and they figure that out. But the key point here is that there are good programs that are out there to help business owners get energy studies done so they can find out where they're wasting energy and take on projects to help reduce that energy waste.
And those,
that's really the key
those,
takeaway here.
Those projects can be anything from energy efficient physical plant items like heating or electrical, and as well as just doing insulation and tightening up the building for.
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, there are lots of opportunities. An office building might have a chiller, which is a large piece of air conditioning equipment, fans, lots of lighting. We thought years ago that moving to fluorescent lighting was energy efficient. Now the opportunities to go to LED lighting offer much, much greater savings, longer lifespan, lower maintenance. One of the things about, and that's something that I think property owners should think about, the savings are not only from taking on the energy efficiency work, but it also comes from reduced maintenance costs and reduced operations costs. Think of how much energy or how much cost there is in sending a crew around to replace light bulbs throughout office buildings, or to tinker with fans and boilers that aren't performing well. There's a lot of money lost in there outside of just the energy.
No, I was always under the impression that the reason why office buildings didn't turn off their lights because turning them on and off
costs more money, right?
Yeah, because it
surge.
It lessened the lifespan of the fix the lights.
Yeah, there is that. Also at home, I often wonder. I have to tell my kids that the light switch also goes down. It doesn't go up only. But we all.
I always love coming home. I count the number of switches I turn off on the way up from the outside to the inside.
But so there are lots of good opportunities. Older buildings, and I think here in Yorktown we have lots of buildings that go back to the 1970s and 60s and even the 1980s. And a lot of these buildings have equipment that dates that old. And you think about it, these. Equipment has a lifespan. Now, for example, now you can get boilers that run at 95% efficient. Back in the day when these buildings were built, an efficient boiler was maybe 65, 67% efficient.
So now, if we try to understand the program, so this program basically applies to all non-residential other than multifamily.
The program, the finance program that we can talk about, really applies to any property that's commercially owned. So if it's it could be a residential building as long as it's in some sort of corporate structure like a limited liability company, an LLC, or something like that.
Right? Sound familiar?
Hey, no. So the idea here, so just so people know, if you have a commercial building and you're looking to do upgrades in your probably most likely an HVAC type of equipment, and you're going to make those upgrades anyhow, I suppose, or you're looking to maybe accelerate the upgrade timetable, you can apply to this program for both financing and is there grant money available for it as well? Or?
Yeah, so there are incentives. So mentioning NYSERDA offers some incentives. They do not just on the studies, but they'll also offer incentives on some of the equipment. NYSEG and Con Edison also offer incentives. So you can pick and choose from whether you want to go with the NYSERDA program or the utility program. But what happens is when you go through those programs, you're going to have another set of eyes that's checking the contractor's calculations or your engineer's calculations, and they're going to help determine what those energy savings are going to be. So, a property owner who wants to take this on knows that the energy study's got some extra sets of eyes, and they can really rely effectively on the savings that are going to be promised.
And you have to actually show that. I mean, you have to be able to sort of have proof of that at the end of the day, and then I guess that it also the cost of improvements also has to have I guess there's a the financing portion of it also has to keep you within a certain, what they call loan-to-value type of ratio as well?
Yeah, so the key thing that I'd like people to think about when they're looking at this kind of financing is that the way it's structured, we can go very long term. We can go out to as long as 20 years with 100% of the capital needed to do these energy improvements. And when you take that cost and you amortize it over a long period, you're going to see the energy savings outweighing the annual finance costs.
Yeah.
So, if a business owner says, well, gosh, I'd like to replace it, but it's going to take me 5 or 6 years to see a payback, the whole point of this finance program changes the dynamic. And now all of a sudden, you look at it as cash flow. And what's business about?
Cash flow.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you're saying it's a net gain no matter what?
It's a net gain right up front. You see more in energy savings than it's going to cost you to service the financing. And being able to finance it over long periods of time ensures that.
Now, what happens, I mean, I guess that's probably that financial arrangement's not assumable on a sale, though, or is it?
It actually is. So that's,
Okay.
see, this is one of the cool things about this. So it's called PACE financing, and it's run by the EnergizeNY group. So we call it the EnergizeNY PACE Finance Program.
And the PACE is an acronym for something?
PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. Exactly. So the property assessment means that you're taking out this loan and you're paying it back through a single line item on the Yorktown property tax bill. So, if Bruce, you want to do it on your building and you decide I'm going to do these improvements and I'm going to take out financing for however many dollars, and we work out what the annual finance charge would be.
Right.
On your tax bill, you'll see a line item that says EnergizeNY PACE Finance Bill.
Okay.
And so that gets, you repay it as part of your taxes, and then it gets collected by the town tax receiver, who then pays the bondholders. We issue bonds as a way to generate the financing money for this. So that's the mechanism.
Yeah, and this is relatively new. I mean, this is only what's the is this is still in its infancy, so to speak, or a toddler or anything?
Yeah,
right?
it is. That's right. PACE programs are operational now in 31 states across the country. Mm-hmm. New York was one of the first. We actually passed this program at the state level in 2009, and we spent the first few years, frankly, building the financial infrastructure to be able to get the money together to make these kinds of loans available to businesses. Yorktown joined in 2014. We're very happy to have Yorktown on board. We're a nonprofit public benefit corporation that's owned by member municipalities. And all our municipalities have very good bond ratings, and that helps to keep our interest rates very low. We find our rates actually to be very, very affordable to property owners.
Where do they land, so to speak?
Right now, I think, and it does move with the market, but right now, if we're looking at 20 or 100% financing, we're seeing interest rates of around 5.5%. So that's very, very affordable, and we can do any term from 5 years out to 20 years, and the shorter the term, the lower the rate.
Yeah, I guess the mechanism of keeping them with having the municipality collecting the payment, does that what makes it transferable to a new owner?
That's exactly right. Yeah, coming back to that point. Yeah, exactly. So because it's paid on the property tax bill, if Bruce decides to pack up and sell his property, the next property owner sees the tax charge on their bill, and they're also seeing the benefit of the energy savings that was part of the original arrangement. So Bruce, being a smart property owner, is telling his buyer, I upgraded my building, it's now worth more, and not only that, you're seeing energy savings that are going to more than outweigh what your tax charges are.
Well, I'm not leaving Yorktown, by the way.
Well, you can move to the next building and upgrade that one.
That's true.
Now, would you have a profile of a typical non-residential property that would fit the bill for some that an owner should explore, saying, "Well, I got one of these buildings that may be a good candidate for the program."
It's really there's no minimum size or maximum size. we're able to provide financing to pretty much any kind of commercially owned property, and we're seeing all sorts. Even small businesses, a standalone building that's a small building might want to put on solar, for example, or insulate. And we're seeing projects, as small as I think we've seen about $25,000 to the millions of dollars, come through the pipeline. So there are all kinds of different projects that come to us.
Does this include hospitals?
So it can include a hospital as long as it's owned by a corporation.
Right.
If it's a municipal hospital, we'd pass on that. And just so everybody understands why that is, if it's owned by a municipality, then the lien really becomes unenforceable. Right? Because you can't foreclose on some. You're not going to foreclose on yourself. But that's really the bottom line.
But I guess if there are commercial property owners out there listening to this, I mean, if they take a look at their building and they see that there is, I guess based upon its age and its construction, underlying construction, and they may be eligible, or they may not even realize that that by the time they're done, they have a big savings right in front of them that they don't know about.
One of the things that we've done in our office is a lot of research to see what kind of property owners do take advantage of PACE. What are the good ones? And one of the things I found as I went back in New York State and did a little bit of historical work. Is that New York State passed its first energy code in 1979. Okay, and it was upgraded in the mid 80s and early 90s, and a couple of times since then, 2007, and it's just being upgraded again. New code is coming out very shortly. So these energy codes mean that buildings that were built at a given point in time had to meet that
certain efficiency,
right? So if you think about it, if you had a building that was built before 1979, well, there were no energy standards. There were no minimum energy standards. So those buildings probably were not designed to be built to operate very efficiently.
Sounds like my 1910 structure may be eligible.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one way to think about it. If you are in a building that was designed and built more recently, well, maybe it's operating efficiently and you don't have lots of deferred maintenance, but you know what? Solar may be a really good option for you at this point. Look at where utility costs are right now. Electric bills can be pretty high.
Yes, very high.
And going solar, what's happened is that, New York State has really gone, frankly, hog wild for solar. The programs that the state offers, there are certain incentives run through something called the New York Sun program, which NYSERDA operates, and that has helped to bring the cost of solar down to where it's very, very cost effective, and it makes a lot of sense, a lot more sense than it made some years back.
Right. Now, what would be a building that would be a good candidate for solar? I guess they have to have certain compost exposure, or and I guess large roofs and et cetera.
Yeah, I think you want obviously south facing towards the sun.
Southern exposure,
right, and you want to see that the building has lots of occupancy as well. If it's just somebody's, if it doesn't get a lot of use, then you're not having a lot of electric load. Solar, of course, is generating power during the day.
Right.
So, office buildings are really good candidates. Businesses are really good candidates because that's when the use is high. And at night, when they're on maybe a lower utility cost rate, they're not using it. So businesses actually benefit very nicely from solar because of the hours of operation.
Are there programs for new construction in that regard, or is that something? Because I got to tell you, I got one of my pet projects is a new highway facility, which is going to be an expansive roof, because they just you're talking about almost a 20,000 square foot footprint.
That's sizable, and that's
Yeah, and
there's a
then-
great opportunity there.
Do they have, and did they have incentive programs for that in terms of new construction?
So there are programs NYSERDA offers. For example, if we were talking about solar, then NYSERDA would offer incentives to add solar to the building. So that's pretty nice right now. You know, depending what utility territory you're in, the amount of the incentive differs a little bit, but you know, right now it's still substantial enough that it's worth considering. You can generate lots of power from a facility like that, and one of the things that's being explored now around New York State is something called community solar, and it's still in its very infancy, but the idea being that you know, if the municipality wanted to put it on a new building, like a highway garage or something like that, they might be able to share that power to other satellite locations around, you know, around their territory, and be able to take advantage of that power in different locations.
Now,
That's another benefit to the project, right?
yeah, no, you know, well, we've also talked, you know, I know there's a trend towards, even in, maybe this is more down south, but, you know, carports, where you don't even have, you know, it's just, in other words, it's just a lean-to type.
Right,
you know,
right. Yeah, three-side or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. Just to put you put the solar on that, and
Oh, really?
you provide. I mean, it's that kind of where it's not even a building construction, but there would also be incentives for that type of thing. Or?
Yeah, it's just, the incentive levels are really the same. There are really three different ways of building solar. One is rooftop. Another might be a carport, as you're describing, you know, in a open parking lot or something like that. And the other is ground mount. A lot of farms. We recently financed a dairy up in Orange County.
Yeah, I heard about that.
really?
Yeah, that was a big ribbon cutting. Oh, somebody did, right?
Yeah,
It's,
that was a lot of fun. It's a place called the Five Spoke Creamery. It's in Orange County, and I think you can find their cheeses around the region. It's a great story. They moved to Orange County from Pennsylvania. They found their utility bills were a little bit higher than they were used to seeing, and they wanted to be more green. They wanted to, you know, operate their farm in a very sustainable way. So they went out and they got a quote for solar, and the solar contractor said, "I can get you an incentive from NYSERDA." And then he said, "I can actually also get you an incentive from the United States Department of Agriculture. They have a program called the REAP grant program for, it's called Rural Energy for America program. It's available to agricultural and small businesses in rural areas all around the country." So they were able to get a couple of grants, but they were still short about $70,000 to get this project done. So they walked